So I'm here with former music executive for Warner Brothers and the author of a golden past and a platinum future, Teddy Astin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. How are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time. Reading your book, one of the things and stuff that I was really impressed with is just like it's this story of like, almost the American dream. Like someone who like, started like, in Grady, a Grady baby, so to speak. What was it like growing up in Atlanta?
Well, basically, again, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on your podcast today. It's really
Welcome.
a real, true honor to be here with you today. Yes, I'm a Grady baby, a native of Atlanta, Georgia, and a lot of people don't know the distinction of what a Grady baby is. Grady's Hospital is one of the largest hospitals, trauma centers in the United States, based here in Atlanta. So people that and when someone says they are a Grady baby, that means that they are a true Atlantean. So many transplants here, so many people come here from so many different areas. So being in Atlanta is very rare that you find anyone from Atlanta. So yes, but even though I was born in Atlanta. We grew up I was raised in rural Atlanta, Fairburn, Palmetto, Union City, Fayetteville, Georgia. All of those was considered the country back then when I was coming up, but now they're all part of the suburbs. Atlanta has grown so much and stretched out all throughout the metropolitan area. Those places that used to take 45 minutes or an hour to get to, now you can get there in 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. So but yes, I'm a native Atlantan and grew up in metropolitan Atlanta as well.
Right. And you started like, working at an early age. If you read the book and you talk about like, starting as like, a dishwasher and then like, as like, you're working doing ribs at a restaurant, like, is that correct?
Well, it was a barbecue chain restaurant, and the barbecue chain restaurant was called Old Hickory House. And I started out there working there as a dishwasher. Later on, no, I started out being a busboy. Busboy, busboy is the one that clean the tables when customers leave for the waitress so they can sit up for the next customer. So I started out as a busboy, and then the dishwasher, and then the cook, and then the pit man. The pit man, is basically the person that's a pit man is the head cook in the restaurant. The pit man is basically responsible for, making cooking the ribs, the barbecue ribs, the brisket beef, the pork butts, barbecue pork sandwiches. The Boston butts is kind of like the filet mignon of pork, so pork, beef, and ribs. That was our main entrees there that people come to the restaurant for. So basically, the Old Hickory House was a chain of restaurants. I worked at several of them throughout the city because I became well known. And hey, when you're well known within your industry, people tend to reach out to you
Right.
and ask you to come and join their staff.
And you had a friend who worked in the music industry, and that's what basically got you the opportunity to start, working in the mailroom at Warner Brothers.
Yes. So while working at the Old Hickory House barbecue chain, I met a young man there. His name was Charles Gear. He was working there as well. Had I never went to work for Old Hickory House, I never would have met him. I never would have been in the music industry. So Charles Gear and Gladys Knight lived in the same neighborhood. He was responsible for recording Gladys Knight's first record, Every Beat of My Heart. And Charles always had his hands in the music industry. So during his tenure at the Old Hickory House restaurant, Atlantic Records had started to grow and expand their staff. Atlantic Records was I guess an up and coming Motown record label at the time. At some point, they probably surpassed Motown because Atlantic Records on their label, they had Clarence Carter, Betty Wright, Average White Band, Aretha Franklin, Donna Hathaway, Roberta Flack, Stacey Lattisaw, so the Tramps, Sister Sledge. So they had a growing roster there. So they hired Charles Gear in the corporation to be the Southeast promotion director for Atlantic Records. And we had there was a distribution center here in Atlanta. And the company was called Time Warner. Time Warner had the record division consisted of 3 record labels. Those 3 and they called the 3 record labels WEA, W-E-A. And the 3 record labels consisted of the W stood for Warner Brothers, the E stood for Elektra, and the A stood for Atlantic. WEA, Warner, Elektra, and Atlantic Records. So Charles went to work for the corporation. And about 6 months later, I'm like, Charles, man, see if you can get me a job. Man, the barbecue ribs and I love working here, but it's time to move on. See if you can get me a job there. So he said, okay, Teddy. When I go to work tomorrow, I'll talk to the warehouse manager, see if he can bring you in, see if he's got any openings. So next day, he said, hey, the warehouse manager wants you to come out for an interview. I was hired on the spot. Started working in the Wheel warehouse, the Warner Brothers Distribution Center in the warehouse. And I really enjoyed it. It was, very different. Plus, I love music, so it was like a kid in a candy store. So when I started working in the warehouse, seeing what the possibilities are and see where the company was going at the time, my job in the warehouse was basically shipping and receiving, shipping records out to record stores, record distributors, and so on. So after about a year in the warehouse, there was a position that became available in the mailroom, and I became the supervisor of the mailroom. And from there, I was able to go to the mailroom and get the mailing list straightened out, because being in the mailroom is a very important job, because you got to make sure that every radio station gets the format of music that they need for their radio station. Prior to me becoming the supervisor of the mailroom, man, they were just mailing records out. Radio station, hey, here's some records. Take them or leave them. If they stick, they stick. They don't, they don't. So my point is, if you are a Black radio station, we got to make sure that you get Black music. Right. If you're a rock and roll radio station, we got to make sure that you get rock and roll music, not country and western, not top 40. You got to get the music for your format. If you're a jazz station, what does it look like sending you country and western records? You know what I mean? So just formatting the mailing list and making sure that everybody got their records for the format was one of the things that I was really highly complimented for, because everybody at a lot of the radio station was calling the company and like, wow, we're finally getting the records that we need for our format. Who's doing it? What took so long? And companies start taking notice. And during that time, Warner Brothers was a rock and roll record label. They didn't have any Black artists, no Black roster. Mm-hmm. So when Warner Brothers started looking around and seeing all the Black artists and the success, the Black music was happening even within our own corporation at Atlantic, they had to make the decision, look, what Black music is doing in the industry. Not only what Atlantic was doing, but what Motown Records was doing, what Epic Records was doing with Black music, what Columbia Records was doing with Black music. So Warner Brothers said, look, along with that, Ryan, Black soundtracks and Black movies was popping. The Mac movie. Not only was it a successful movie, but it was selling tens of millions of records for the soundtrack. Same thing with Shaft, the movie Shaft, and the soundtrack. Same thing with several other black movies. So Warner Brothers was like, man, we got to get into the black music industry, and they said, we're going to go around the country. We're going to hire the best staff that we can that's available, and we're going to build a black music dynasty. And that's what we did, Ryan, because, we started out, like I said, Warner Brothers didn't have any black music. So we started a label at Warner Brothers that's unprecedented, unheard of, starting from scratch because we didn't have anybody. So starting out, we signed Prince, Morris Day and the Time, Vanity Six, Sheila E., Zap, featuring Roger, Madonna. Madonna started out at black radio before pop radio even knew who she was. Quincy Jones came to Warner Brothers. He brought his record label there, Quest Records. And part of his record label was Tevin Campbell, Patty Austin, and James Ingram. Along with Quincy Jones' label, Miles Davis came over to Warner Brothers. We had a record label that we distributed called Island Records, who brought us Bob Marley to the label. Sly Stone. We'll start with Larry Graham first. When Sly and the Family Stone broke up, Larry Graham was the bass player for Sly and the Family Stone. When the group broke up, Larry Graham came to Warner Brothers. We signed him up. He had the biggest record that he could even imagine, 1 in a Million You. So Sly saw what we did for Larry Graham. He came over to Warner Brothers. We signed Donna Summer. We had Sylvester the Disco King. We signed him up. Shaka Khan.
You talk about so much of this in the book, and like I loved it. You pretty much compare it to the TV show Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So like everybody's seen the television show Empire, but you actually live that experience, and some of the things in the book that I was reading about, and stuff, everything, how you guys got the 50 limousines and stuff for radio executives and hotels and stuff, everything, to give them the parties, and then
it was unheard of. Yeah. It was unheard of some of the things that I was allowed to do.
Yeah.
It was a brand new label, and hey, we had nowhere to go but up. And Warner Brothers always felt like, look, if you're not spending money, you ain't doing your job. If you work for this label, and if you're not creative enough to do promotions, to do marketing, to do the unexpected, whatever it took to bring that publicity and get your records played at the radio station, man, you gotta be creative. You really have to be creative, and that was one of the things I was really blessed to be creative, because the gentleman that got me the job in the Warner Brothers warehouse is the same person that trained me, Charles Gill. He used to take me out on the road with him on the weekend, to different concerts with Aretha Franklin, the Tramps, the Spinners, the radio interviews, press parties.
I was really impressed by your creativity, and a lot of the stories, the first time and stuff, everything, Prince came to do radio in Charlotte, being a part, that historical moment in music, in 1978. I didn't realize, Prince was so young at the time when he was signed. He was 16, and here you are, bringing them to Charlotte for a food giveaway.
Yeah, it was basically, yeah. I mean, Prince was one of my first big promotions that I did, because now I'm working at Warner Brothers. The position that I was hired for was promotion and marketing manager for North and South Carolina. They sent me to North Carolina, living in Charlotte, to develop the black music market for the label. And during that time, they signed Prince to the label. youngest artist ever signed to the label. He wrote the wrote all the lyrics to the album. He played all the instruments. He sang all the songs, all the background. He did everything on the album and produced it and brought it to us on a silver platter. So I took early notice of his talent. And the first thing I wanted to do, in fact, it was the first promotional party that I had in Charlotte. I wanted to bring him to Charlotte for a annual Thanksgiving food drive.
Right.
And in conjunction with a radio station there in Charlotte, WGIB. So after going back and forth with the label, you know, why I wanted to bring him here and why they didn't think it was a good idea, we finally worked it out. And the reason they felt like it wasn't a good idea because Prince wasn't very talkative at the time.
Right.
You
I thought
know,
that was really interesting. He wasn't like a big talker. Like,
yeah.
I didn't know that about like, him like early on and stuff and everything. Was that just because he was shy or like, he was just trying to add to the mystery? I like, it didn't really give, I feel like a reason like necessarily in the book.
Well, I think it was a combination of all of the above. I want to, I want to be, hey, I'm Prince. You know, this is what I do. I'm different. I'm creative. No, I don't talk a lot, but I'm a very smart person. I'm a genius, you know? So, and that was Warner Brothers' concern that, hey, you don't talk a lot. So it may do more harm than good to bring him. So I'm like, look, I got this. I got this. Let me do it. Let me do it. Okay. Finally, they said, what do you need in order to make this happen? I said, well, we're going to need, because at the time, North and South Carolina had more black radio stations in that region than any other region in the country.
Right.
That means I could break more records quicker and faster than anyone else in the country and on the staff. So I said, these are the things that I'm going to need. I'm going to need 50 albums for every black radio station in North and South Carolina. What? Man, I never did nothing like that before. It's going to be about 3,000 albums. Oh, okay. What else you need? Well, we're going to need to buy advertising at every one of these radio stations too. What? Man, back then that was unheard of, to do a whole blanket advertising campaign in 2 states. And the reason I wanted to do that because I wanted everybody to hear the same message. Prince has a brand new album featuring the hit single "Soft and Wet." And if you want to meet Prince, you want to get his autograph. He's going to be in Charlotte on Thanksgiving Day. In order to get his autograph, all you got to do is bring 2 cans of non-perishable food. People were bringing box loads of food. People were bringing carloads of food. One of the last thing I asked Warner Brothers that I told Warner Brothers that I need, I'm going to need 2 tractor trailers full of 2 tractor trailers. Well, what do you need 2 tractor trailers for? Well, we're going to have so much food, we got to have someplace to put it. Okay, Teddy, you got it. So basically, Prince come to town a couple of days before Thanksgiving. He said, Teddy, what do you want me to do? He said, look, man, I heard so much about you. Looking forward to working with you. What do you want me to do? And I held up an itinerary. I said, this is what I need you to do. This is what we're going to do. This is what days and what time we're going to do these things. He said, okay, cool, man, I can do that. He said, I only have one request. But what do you want? What's your request, Prince? He said, when we finish with this promotional tour, will you take me to see Superman? Sure, we can see for Superman. That's an easy one there. Because, all the blockbuster movies usually come out around Thanksgiving. All the holidays, Christmas, New Year, 4th of July, Memorial Day weekend. So that, that was one of the big, because the promotion just kind of blew up. Because I had all of this advertising going in 2 states at every black radio station saying, if you want to meet Prince, he's going to be in Charlotte. 1 o'clock Thanksgiving Day. Want to get his autograph? Bring some non-perishable food. All the expressway was blocked off. People trying to get to the radio station. All the side streets was jammed. State Patrol comes up there to the radio station like, what's going on here? What are y'all doing? Who's here? Who's in charge? So everybody looks at me and Teddy's in charge. They said, what do you got going here? I said, well, I have Prince in town. Prince. Nobody told the governor or the mayor that a prince would be in town. What's the king and the queen? I said, the king and the queen is at the hotel. I didn't bring the whole royal entourage. I just brought the prince. And he said, well, you ever do anything like that again, you make sure that you call us because we got to be prepared. We can't have an international prince in town and the governor not know it. We have to be prepared for this. I said, okay, I will. And I said, by that time the food drive was winding down. And I asked the state patrol, I said, we're gonna go over to Charlottetown Mall to the movie theater. Could you escort us over there? Sure, I will. I'll do that for you. Because we never would have gotten out of there, man. This traffic was still jammed, man. I don't know how they got all those cars off the street. How they got the traffic flowing. But that was the first big promotion that I did. And when I did that, I said, I got something special here, I can do
that's
this.
where your name, like, started spreading, like, as far as like in the music industry,
Yes.
this guy, like, doing like, these big promotional events. One of the promotional events I really thought was like cool in the book, the story was of meeting Bob Marley promoting the Survival album.
Yes.
And like, you just basically like, end up meeting him and like getting invited, like, to his home in Jamaica.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Bob Marley, that was one of the, another promotion that I'll always remember. Bob Marley had a brand new album out called Survival. The album cover had a flag of all the African states. And it was one of those classic albums, and it was a really, really big deal because it was Bob Marley's last album, and I hosted his last promotional tour. And even though that was his last album that he recorded, usually when an artist passed, they usually come up with stuff out the can that was never released. But that was his last official album on Warner Brothers and Island Records. And I was living in Washington, D.C. By that time, I had been promoted to National Director of Promotion. From Charlotte, I had moved to Washington, D.C. and put together a promotional party for Bob Marley, new album, and I've always been a big Bob Marley fan. So, to me, it was just an honor to do this because I was really looking forward to it. So, once we got the party set, got the date locked in, I sent out all of the invitations. It was probably one of the best turnouts of any promotional party that I've ever done. Congressional Black Caucus there from DC, senators, Congress people, press people from New York, Philadelphia, Virginia, Baltimore, DC. It was a great turnout, man. In fact, that is in my book. That whole party is in my book. After the party, Bob Marley asked me to come up to his suite. And we did. We went up. I went up. We kicked around a little bit. He said, Teddy, do you ever go to Jamaica? I said, of course I go to Jamaica. I take my family there just about every year. He said, well, the next time you come to Jamaica, you let me. Next time you get ready to go to Jamaica, you let me know. I got you. He said, well, I'm going to have my guide come over to your resort, and we're going to show you the real Jamaica. He said, what do you like? What do you usually stay in Jamaica? And I said, we usually stay in the Grill. He said, okay, well, my hometown is only 10 miles from there. That's perfect location. He said, I'm gonna have my guy come over. We're gonna show you the real Jamaica. And I'm gonna show you, they're gonna bring you over to my childhood home, show you where I was raised. They shut down the whole tour for me and my family to go into Bob Marley's home to see the little bed that he, as when he was a young man, a little boy. He showed that's where he slept. That was his bedroom. His mom's small kitchen. where him and his siblings, slept, 3, 4 in a room. It was a real treat there, and this guy took me all over the place, so and he said, I'm gonna have my guy take you to the best marijuana fields in Jamaica. Cool. That works for me. I'm looking forward to it. So it was really good. It was a really good, great tour. I really enjoyed that. In fact, Ball passed about 3 or 4 months after that promotional tour. Yeah, sure did.
Yeah, like that is like a surreal story. I don't know how many people like have lived like this amazing life that you have, and like I see you being a little choked up. He was a good friend of yours.
Hmm. Yeah, he was. He really, really was. Because all of the artists, they always wanted to, wherever I was working, well, whether I was in the Carolinas, whether I was in DC, or whether when I moved back to Atlanta, everybody wanted to come and work with me because they would see all the publicity that we created in all the music trade magazines like Billboard and Record World, all the even I have some photos, even some of the parties and promotions that I did in Jet magazine. So it was, people really wanted to come and work with me, and plus they became more than just artists. They became friends and acquaintances, and it was more than just a job.
Yeah, and I think it's like really great. Like they always say that saying like you want to do something where you don't feel like you're working. And like that's the sense I get, like, when you talk about like, your time in the music industry, and like, where people appreciate you and respect the work you're doing. And like, you've received a lot of honors, but what was it like, getting presented with a gold plaque for Boys in the Hood from Quincy Jones?
Oh, it was a very, just to be in Quincy Jones' presence, working with his artists, working with his roster of artists, Tevin Campbell, Patty Austin, James Ingram, uh, the Boys in the Hood soundtrack. It was a real honor, because even before the Boys in the Hood soundtrack, I did a great promotion for on Patty Austin. She had an album out called Getting Away with Murder. And basically, I'm thinking, wow, she's getting away with murder. Huh? Okay. Come to Atlanta, I'm going to show her something. Can't get away with Atlanta. So we're coming out of a nightclub, 3 or 4 in the morning. Atlanta was always very friendly, very entertainment friendly. So I had a couple of my police friends, one a detective, one's a patrolman. As we're leaving the club, they're like, "Are you Patty Austin?" "Yes, I'm Patty Austin." "Did you do an album called Getting Away with Murder?" "Yes." "Well, put your hands up. You're not getting away with murder here in Atlanta. Put your hands up." They put the handcuffs on her. And she's like, "Daddy, Daddy, please help me, Daddy." And everybody's laughing, and some people didn't know what was going on. They thought it was serious. They done locked up Patty Austin. What did she do? That photo ended up in Jet magazine.
Okay.
Quincy Jones saw it. And he called me and said, "Teddy, we work with a lot of artists. I worked with a lot of artists in my career, and never seen a promotion, such a creative promotion in my career. When you come out to LA, you let me know. I'd like to spend some time with you." So that promotion with Patty Austin led to me having a great relationship with James Ingram, which was one of Quincy's artists. Even with now with Tevin Campbell, I mean, the buzz that we created on Tevin Campbell, Can We Talk? There's a Tevin Campbell challenge around the world, even on Zoom, YouTube, the Tevin Campbell challenge. So, um, on to the Boys in the Hood soundtrack. That's one of my favorite movies, Boys in the Hood. I watch it probably
That's
twice a year.
incredible, directed by John Singleton, rest in peace. Like
Yeah, yeah. I think John Singleton was one of the youngest producers to ever produce a movie. And so at our national conference, um, Quincy Jones wanted to show his appreciation. You know, he called me up on stage and a few of my colleagues, and he presented us with the platinum album, Boys in the Hood. So that was one of the highlights of my career because, you know, if Quincy Jones recognized you for something and congratulate you and recognize you and tell you to come to LA, when you come to LA, make sure you come by his house, you've arrived.
Yeah, like and I love that story and like the fact like that you were influential in so many like great records promoting them. Even like working with Madonna, and I saw those promotional photos from like when you were promoting Madonna's like a virgin and dressing
Yeah.
the Pope. I thought that like what I mean and stuff everything like was really incredible. What I really was interested in like because I am a fan of hip hop though is like you worked on Ice-T and you have this photo of like where you took Ice-T because I guess like Sire Records.
Yes, that was the label. We distributed Sire Records and promoted and marketed their music, which also included Madonna and Ice-T. Yes, and Ice-T, man, man, he is one of the most talented entrepreneurs. I wouldn't just say rapper, entrepreneurs. In fact, Ice-T received his Hollywood star fame
Yeah,
last year, and last week.
last week. Yeah,
And last week was his birthday, so he got the Hollywood Star Hall of Fame, Walk of Fame, the day after his birthday. So
right.
yeah, and because back then, you know, we weren't used. He was the first rap artist we signed, and we weren't used to no gangster rap. You know, he put out a record called Cop Killer and this and that. I'm like, ooh, boy, what are we gonna do with this? the, and a lot of the law enforcement people took offense to that,
Right. I
and
remember that time I was a child, but like I remember like seeing it was a very like big issue. Like they talked about the topic on a lot of like TV shows at the time and the news, didn't have social media like it was like now. But
yeah, yeah. So even the one of us even told us this. Said, look, when y'all like traveling, you may not want to tell people you know what you do, who you work for, because if Ice-T come up and the cops stop you, they may want to use that against you. So, but you know, it was just another record, man. After we got a chance to know Ice-T and work with him and travel with him and take him on these promotional tours, man, this guy's one of the most intelligent artists I've ever met in my life.
I believe it like when you look at his longevity and music and like what he's been able to do with like Law and Order as an actor, like
Yeah.
the show's been like going on for like something like 20 years and like
Yeah. And all the endorsement he does, so yeah.
man,
Very smart man.
I'm really like so inspirational to see like how like much like over the years like giving back to the community service has been like a part of your life, and like you actually received a President Volunteer Service Award. I know that's like a really incredible accomplishment. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. It was a President Joseph Biden Volunteer Service Award. For all the things that I've done, not that I've done, all the things that I continue to do in the community. And it was a great honor just to be recognized. In fact, I met another president as well. So, but that particular award is very special to me. It's right there at the top. And I must say, one of the other presidents that I met was President Jimmy Carter. And President Jimmy Carter, in fact, I'm getting ready to do a tribute to him because I was invited to the White House. Well, not just me, but the music industry was invited to the White House. A lot of people in the music industry was invited to the White House. And President Carter proclaimed June being Black Music Month.
Right.
That's the president. That's why we have June as Black Music Month now, because of President Jimmy Carter. Also, I was always a big fan of President Carter because, of course, he was the state senator of Georgia in Georgia. He became the governor of Georgia, and later on became president of the United States. But one thing that President Carter always say that stick in my mind, that he says he never would have became president of the United States without the music industry.
Mm.
Because he said when he first announced that he was running, he had no money. He had zero money.
Yeah.
And him being in Atlanta, of course, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, and a lot of our country and western artists uh, lived in metropolitan Atlanta and Macon and so on, so forth. So a lot of those artists, like the Marshall Tucker Band, the Allman Brothers Band, George Benson, all those artists was on Warner Brothers, but it had nothing to do with the label. It just happened to be convenient at the time. Dizzy Gillespie, Herbie Hancock, all of those people did fundraisers for Jimmy Carter to give him the money that you need for publicizing and advertising your campaign. So he said, but he said without the music industry, he never would have became president of the United States.
Man, I completely believe it. And I think like, Jimmy Carter has definitely like demonstrated like, the importance of, community service. And I commend him for that as well. And you followed in those same, footsteps in that mold. You talk about like, the current music scene in Atlanta and how you're so inspired by like, the newer artists, from, T.I., like, Killer Mike.
Mm-hmm. Rick Ross.
Rick Ross as well.
Yeah. Those are, and that's what impressed me. I'm always music when you're a successful artist, you know, uh, that's impressive. To have a gold record, platinum album, have your records played all over the place. But when you're doing more than just rapping and singing, and when you start doing things in the community and you become an entrepreneur and you're helping the homeless, these guys always got a cause, and their cause is it's not their only cause, but they're very community conscious. And we're just fortunate that all three of them are living here in Atlanta.
Most definitely. Uh, Thank you, Teddy Astin. It has definitely been a pleasure. The author of Golden Past and a Platinum Future. Where can people follow you on social media?
Well, first of all, again, the title of my album is A Golden Past and a Platinum Future. I have a website set up just for the book. The website address is www.toughact.net. That's TOUGHACT.net. Now, each page on the website would take you directly to Amazon to purchase the book. But what's also just as important is you'll be able to go to the website, be able to learn more about me, Teddy, the author, my background, my history. You'll be able to see uh, over 50 gold and platinum albums that I received from different artists over the years. You'll also be able to see some of the book reviews that I've gotten from a lot of the people that has purchased and bought my book. Also, there you can send me a message if you want to send me a book review.